All right, let's address the elephant in the room first. I did call this shoe, the Nike Zoom Fly 6, just another generic super trainer. Yeah, I said that, and I was wrong. While Nike does use the term super trainer in its press release for this shoe, it's not a super trainer. It's actually a tempo trainer. And it's a very classic tempo trainer that brings the Zoom Fly series back to its roots, where it started. And the difference may seem like semantics, but there are considerable differences. So let's get into it. All right then, what is a tempo trainer? Well, classically, at least pre-2017, a tempo trainer was basically an older pair of race flats or race shoes that you've retired from racing, but you're still going to train in them. You're still going to do your speed workouts and speed training in them, so you can save your newer pair of race flats or race shoes for racing, keep them fresher. There weren't really dedicated tempo trainers pre-2017 and the introduction of the Nike Vaporfly 4% and the Nike Zoom Fly 1, the original Zoom Fly. And to talk more about that, let's look at the history of the Zoom Fly series. And the story of the Zoom Fly does really start here in 2017 with the introduction of the Vaporfly 4% and the original Zoom Fly. Now that original Zoom Fly set the template for what the Zoom Fly would become over the next few generations. It was a firmer foam. The original Zoom Fly actually had Lunarlon foam with a carbon infused plate. It wasn't a full carbon fiber plate, but it was a stiffer, firmer ride that put a lot more leverage on the 4-foot rocker and that 4-foot spoon of the plate to really roll you off the toe and give you some of that feel from the Vaporfly 4%, but allow you to save the durability of your super shoes or your Vaporfly 4%, because at the time they were very delicate and you did want to save them for racing. Soon after that, we got the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit, which also released the Zoom Fly Flyknit. In between the first two Zoom Flies was actually another Zoom Fly called the Zoom Fly SP, or Special Projects, that was still Lunarlon, but that actually introduced a core of React foam in the middle of that shoe. I don't think a lot of people remember that shoe because it really wasn't that popular. I saw them all around in New York City when I was, running in these. I never had a pair, but I did start with the Zoom Fly Flyknit. And I think that's the one where a lot of people remember and started with. And that was the first React foam Zoom Fly. So that had React foam and it got a carbon fiber plate. So it was a stiffer shoe overall, but it still leveraged that firmer ride that used a lot of the leverage of the toe rocker and the plate in the 4-foot to really roll you forward and giving you that real tempo or that faster speed workout shoe in parallel to the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. With the introduction of the Vaporfly Next%, we got the Zoom Fly 3. This was a substantial update. It was actually probably my favorite Zoom Fly to date. I really love the Zoom Fly. I spent a lot of time in it. I actually raced in the Zoom Fly 3. But again, it continued the design language. It continued the ability of the Zoom Fly to be that firmer, more durable training partner to the Vaporfly. It was firmer, it was stiffer, it rolls you off the toe more aggressively. It just really defined the template of the Zoom Fly. However, in 2020, we got the Alpha Fly, and with the Alpha Fly, we got the Tempo Next%, which kind of, I think in many ways was meant to replace the Zoom Fly, because the Zoom Fly kind of went away for a little bit at that time. And it seemed like the Tempo Next% was now the tempo trainer within the Nike running line. However, with the introduction of the Vaporfly Next% 2, we did get a Zoom Fly 4, which was really just an upper change on the Zoom Fly 3. And as I remember, it wasn't released in every market, so a lot of people never even saw it. I had a pair, it was fine, but it wasn't really any different than the Zoom Fly 3. With the introduction of the Alpha Fly 2, though, we saw sort of a combination of the Tempo Next% with the Zoom Fly 4 into the Zoom Fly 5. Now, I think this is Nike trying to be economical with their tempo trainer and make a tempo trainer that's going to work for both the Vaporfly and the Alpha Fly. The problem with that, though, is it didn't really work for either because it didn't feel like either. It was just kind of bulky. It wasn't really a good Zoom Fly. It set it down a different course. We got the Vaporfly 3, then we got the Alpha Fly 3, and it seemed like Nike was never going to have another tempo shoe. And then we got the Zoom Fly 6. And the Zoom Fly 6, in my mind, really is the middle ground between the Vaporfly and the Alphafly, but it kind of works for both. It takes the best out of both, and it was a really good shoe that also brought it back to the lineage of what the Zoomfly platform has always been. In 2025, we should see the introduction of a Vaporfly 4, and I do think the Zoomfly 6 is giving us a bit of a preview about how that shoe is going to ride. But as far as tempo trainers go, I don't think Nike is totally done here. I do think for those of you who love the Tempo Next Percent and you like tempo training in an Air Zoom unit, I do think there's a shoe for you, and I think that's the Pegasus Premium. Now, the Peg Premium I don't think is a direct replacement for the Tempo Next Percent, though if you remember when the Tempo Next Percent originally came out, it was actually called the Pegasus Tempo Next Percent. And what I think the Peg Premium is really going for is really trying to go in that direction of bringing back an Air Zoom tempo trainer. The Peg Premium I don't think is the final stop for that, and I think Nike's going to evolve this quite a bit. This is going to be a subject of some videos I'll be doing a lot early this year, so stay tuned for that if you're interested for that full story and my full thoughts of that. With all that history and a little future thinking out of the way, let's get into the Zoomfly 6. Starting with the specs of this shoe, we have 40 millifoam in the heel, 32 millifoam in the forefoot, giving you an 8 mil drop. And I will say the drop in this shoe feels like a real 8 mil. This is a Zoomfly. It's a shoe that puts you up on your toes and really is best when you're way up on your toes, really activating that roll forward from the plate and the foam in the shoe. I'll talk more about that in the ride of this shoe. The US men's size 9 reference size comes in at about 9 ounces or 256 grams. Though as you can see in my pair, they're a little bit under that. I will say that this does not feel like a heavy shoe. This does not feel like almost a 9-ounce shoe, even in my US men's size 9. I'm not going to say it feels light on your feet, but it definitely does not feel that heavy. It's quite an interesting feel. And for those of you who have run in the Zoomfly before, I will also say that this shoe is not bottom heavy anymore. The Zoomfly 3 and 4 and even 5 were very bottom heavy because of the foams that were in the midsoles of those shoes. This shoe, which is a combination of ZoomX foam and SRO2 foam, I'll get into that in the midsole section, definitely doesn't have that heavy under the foot feel, which is a noticeable change in this shoe, even though the ride is really back to what the Zoomfly has always been. And that ride is what I will describe as lively. There is some sink to this shoe and there is energy return to this shoe, but it is not tuned like a super shoe. This is not an Alphafly or a Vaporfly, but it's got parts of both. And I think that's going to make this shoe really usable for anyone who is looking for a good tempo trainer to pair with their Nike race shoes. Starting with the upper on this shoe, we actually have a 2-layered upper, and this is very reminiscent of the Zoomfly 3, which was an upper that I love, though this is significantly simplified and much lighter weight. What we have here is a more rigid, kind of wiry mesh on the outside, and on the inside, close to the foot, there is a much more open woven mesh that provides a lot of softness against the foot. So you're getting the flex inside, but it's being contained by this outer sort of wiry mesh or plastically mesh outer material. It works really well. It gives a very conforming fit to the foot, but it's also somewhere between a training fit and a race fit. I wouldn't say this is as tight as a race fit, but it's definitely not as comfortable or as open as a training fit. It's just a really nice mix, and I've really enjoyed the way this shoe feels on foot. We have a very simple eyelet chain, which I think honestly works really well. The laces on this shoe don't give you the lockdown that, say, the laces do on the Vaporfly or the Alphafly. They're not the toothed laces, but they do the job. We have some padding back here with a very high Achilles flare, but there's a deep pocket back here for your heel, so I'm not getting any heel lift issues in here, and I can't see where many people would because there is a nice pocket back there. And in the forefoot, we have fairly decent volume in what I'm going to call a fairly squared off toe box. The toe box taper on this shoe, especially on the lateral side, does not swoop in drastically like it does on a lot of Nike shoes lately, particularly the Pegasus Premium or the Peg 41. So while this is not a wide shoe, I would say that this is somewhere in the middle. It's a tighter, more race-oriented fit that has some comfort from a training fit, but there is room up here, especially ahead of the ball of the foot, for the toes to splay in here. And you've got a lot of feel from the toes in here, and a lot of that is because of the extra width that's in the toe box area of the shoe. The volume of the toe box is really nice. This more plasticky wire mesh outer material on the upper really keeps all the material off of the toe. I'm having no toe issues and no sort of tightness anywhere that's uncomfortable in the shoe. Overall, I find the fit of this shoe really, really well done. And going to sizing, I went true to size in this. This is US men's size 9. That's what I wear in pretty much every Nike shoe, from a Pegasus to an Alphafly to a Vaporfly. As I said, this is a fit that's somewhere between a race fit and a training fit. It is not a wide shoe. If you have a wide foot, this is probably not going to work for you. But if you have a normal to narrow foot, this shoe is going to work fairly well. Overall, if you run in the Alphafly 3, this shoe feels narrower in the forefoot, but the lockdown I think is more traditional since it's not a booty upper. And if you run in the Vaporfly 3, the upper on this is going to feel much more tight against the foot because it's not as generous fitting as the Vaporfly 3. But I think the width is somewhere around what the Vaporfly 3 width is. It's just the upper materials are very different, so this shoe still fits very differently. But my recommendation for this would be to go true to size. Moving to the midsole of this shoe, one of my biggest questions about this shoe when I first saw it is, why is there SRO2 foam in this shoe? Now, SRO2 foam is Nike's just sort of generic EVA-like foam. It's a foam that's in a lot of different shoes, and it's just a foam that's, not necessarily really performance-oriented. I was actually wondering, why doesn't this shoe have Cushion in it or React X in it? Well, now that I've run over 50 miles in this shoe, I think I finally get it. The foam that's directly underfoot in this shoe is ZoomX foam. That is Nike's premier racing foam. The same foam that's in the Vaporfly or the Alphafly. And that's a foam that's directly under the foot above the plate that's going to give you that sort of sink and sort of that feel of ZoomX. However, the carrier foam, the rest of the foam that you can see under the ZoomX foam in the shoe, is the SRO2 foam, which in this case is a very airy formula of SRO2 foam, which complements the airiness and the sink of ZoomX really well, much better than Cushion would, because Cushion is a much more firm foam to me. And React X, while I was really curious to see this shoe in React X, that's going to be too bouncy, and that's going to make this shoe a little bit too much of a handful, or maybe make it a little bit too close to the Alphafly or the Vaporfly for Nike. This is a trainer meant to kind of sit between a daily trainer and their super shoe. So this is not trying to compete with the Alphafly or Vaporfly. So the combination of the two foams in here, I think, works really well. And again, that combination of the airy ZoomX foam with this airy formula of SRO2 foam makes this shoe very light underfoot. Even though it is almost a 9-ounce shoe in my US men's size 9, this is not a bottom-heavy shoe. And that has always been a criticism of the past Zoomflies, the Zoomfly 3 and Zoomfly 4 in particular, because they were a big chunk of React X foam under the foot. The swing weight of that shoe was just very bottom heavy because there was just a big heavy chunk of React foam under your foot. This shoe is not like that at all. This shoe feels on foot and is balanced on foot, very similar to an Alphafly or a Vaporfly. And I think that's a real feat of engineering to achieve that with these two foams. And moving to the outsole of this shoe, I have to say this is one of my favorite outsoles on a Nike shoe in some time. And Nike's had some great outsoles. This big piece of forefoot rubber, which is waffled, but cut out where it needs to be, that's very forefoot forward, meaning a lot of the traction of the shoe is right on the ball of the foot and forward of it, which really means that this shoe grips and runs best really up on the toes, and I'll get to that in the ride section of this video, is really well done. The same rubber is now on the heel, giving you more protection in the heel and traction for heel striking. And between that, we have Nike's reductive design, which is something we've seen in quite a few Nikes over the past year or two, that's exposing the fly plate, the carbon fiber fly plate, but also reducing a lot of weight from the outsole and midsole of the shoe. Again, the swing weight of this shoe is very well balanced. But this outsole is just simple. It does the job. It's cut out where you don't need the material to save weight. And I've found the grip of this to just be exceptional really on every type of surface, wet, dry, asphalt, concrete, even light trail, and even track. This shoe just sort of does everything. I've even run on the treadmill on this shoe, which is something I never do. And I found it very nice on the treadmill and not noisy at all, not squeaky, not any of the problems that I typically associate with treadmill running. This shoe just kind of works everywhere as far as grip and how the outsole performs. Again, really well engineered. Moving to the right of the shoe, I'm going to start with the first point that this is not a daily trainer. This is not a shoe that anyone should recommend as a daily training option. This shoe is too stiff, too firm, too aggressive off the toe to be a daily option. And this is where I'm saying this is now a classic tempo trainer that's brought the Zoom Fly 6 back into the fold of what the Zoom Fly has always been. And it's that optimization around performance and speed that make this that classic tempo trainer. This is a shoe to put on for your fast workouts, for workouts that have marathon pace in them, half marathon pace. You're going to go do 1K repeats trying to prepare for a 10K race. You're going to go do 400s or 800s working on 5K speed. This shoe will do all of that, and that's really what this is for. It's actually quite brilliant for all of those use cases. Now, you can run easy in this shoe, but this is never a shoe that I'm going to go put on my feet and just go for an easy run, even though I did do that in the testing of this shoe just to find out that, no, this is not the shoe that you want for easy running. But if your workout has easy running in it, for example, you're doing, 5 by 1K with 30 seconds of easy running in between that with a warm up and cool down all in one shoe, this will do that just fine. But if you're going to go out and go for a 60 or 90 minute easy long run, this is not the shoe that you want on your foot. Again, it's really optimized around speed, and that optimization is what makes this shoe so effective. With all that being said, that optimization is where I've really found this shoe to shine for faster running. And the low plate configuration in the shoe, similar to the Vaporfly, meaning the plate starts high in the heel, drops in the midfoot, and you can see that right here in this cutout, comes close to the ground and then goes up into the toe spring, is very prevalent in giving you a roll forward. Now, the plate geometry and the dip in the midfoot isn't quite as aggressive as the Vaporfly is. There's a little bit more foam between the plate and the ground, which smooths this shoe out, which makes this shoe not quite as rough and harsh on the foot. Plus the Zoom X that's between your foot and the plate also smooths a lot of that out, which makes this, again, a tempo trainer. It's not as aggressive and, kind of a handful as a super shoe is, but it's still a shoe that's going to really reward a really good crisp forefoot strike and really roll you forward with a lot of resiliency between the foams in the shoe and the geometry of the spoon of the plate popping out of each strike. And to encourage that, I've actually found that the shape of the toe box, the shape of the front of the shoe, is quite unique. It's quite a bit different than either the Alphafly 3 or the Vaporfly 3. Now, I talked about how the toe box is a little bit more squared off. The lateral toe box taper is less extreme in this shoe, and there's more material as far as width under the toes of this shoe. Now, this is still a Nike shoe. It still has that Nike feel where you're kind of running directly off your big toe. It feels like you're right on the ground, right at toe off. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I have a whole video that describes the Nike feel, link in the description. It's not that. This still has that Nike feel, but it feels like there's more width ahead of the ball of the foot, meaning the plate, I believe, is a little bit wider under the toes. It's not just a pointy plate that's kind of directly under the big toe. It feels like a plate that's kind of under all of my toes now. So it's giving me a lot more of a platform to really land on ahead of the ball on my foot, encouraging that really aggressive forefoot strike. I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it's very efficient for me as a forefoot striker, but I'm also finding it very, very nice as a training tool to really work on form, to really work on engaging a really clean forefoot strike, building the foot strength and the Achilles strength and the calf strength to really be that aggressive up on my toes. But overall, the shoe's supporting me, it's holding my foot in, and it's just doing a beautiful job with encouraging, again, that really nice forefoot strike. That's not to say that you can't heel strike in this shoe. When I've tested heel striking in this shoe, I found that this heel, especially these two pads back here, really capture the heel and roll it through the midfoot and again engage this forefoot and roll you forward. It's not quite as aggressive feeling as landing up on the forefoot, but you're definitely getting a very roll experience. But because of the Zoom X in the forefoot of the shoe, you're getting a little bounce on toe off as well. So as I said, it's got that roll of the Vaporfly, but it's got some of the bounce of the Alphafly. It's, again, somewhere in between those two shoes. And for a midfoot striker, I think you're getting the benefits of that bounce really nicely because there's a big chunk of Zoom X foam right here where you're really engaging that, loading that up, and as you kind of toe off, the plate is springing you forward and the foam is releasing, and again, you get a really energetic toe off for midfoot strikes. Again, it's a shoe that is really well considered, really well engineered for really any type of foot strike, but definitely rewards a really nice clean forefoot strike. Over the 50 miles I put into this shoe in testing, I just found it very capable. It does the faster stuff better. It definitely wants you to be more aggressive. It wants you to be really pushing into the ground and really driving energy into the ground so the shoe can return it. But I just found it very capable. I didn't really find anywhere where the shoe doesn't really work out or doesn't really perform well. Again, it's not a shoe I'm going to recommend for easy running. Do not go pick this up as your dedicated easy run shoe or a dedicated daily trainer. I think there's better options out there for that. But for a shoe that has the durability of a daily trainer with most of the performance, like 75-80% of the performance of a super shoe, this is a really, really great option. And lastly, another key use case for a shoe like this is as a entry-level or budget race day option. For a runner who doesn't want to spend or go all the way up to a full super shoe, you're getting a lot of that technology and a lot of that feel in this shoe that's going to probably be a bit of a better option for a marathoner looking for a 4-hour plus marathon. This shoe is going to give you all of the performance to hit those times and do really well, but it's going to have the durability to do all the training that you need in it, paired with a good daily trainer, race in it, and then continue to train, because this shoe is built for speed and efficiency, but also durability and some comfort. So it's going to be a great option for runners looking for a good race day option that's not going to break the bank or maybe go all the way up to the top tier of super shoes. Overall, I'm really enjoying this shoe, and I'm really happy to see the Zoomfly back to what the Zoomfly has always been. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the Zoomflies over the years. I've even raced in them, as I said. And this shoe feels now like a Zoomfly has always felt. And that's really nice. It's like an old friend who's come back, and I didn't realize how much I missed the feeling of this shoe. But this shoe is very modern in the sense that it's definitely modernized. This has fixed some of the problems that have plagued the Zoomflies, mainly the weight and the overall stiffness of the shoe. This shoe fixes both of those, and you're getting a package that is just a really great, capable tempo trainer, really geared around faster running. Now, I did not think I'd be making this video. I did not think I would be enjoying the shoe, because as a runner, I'm someone who does want to train in the super shoes that I'm going to race in. But right now, where I'm not really training for any specific race, I'm doing speed work, but I'm not planning for any specific race right now, this is a great option for faster road running. I don't think I'm going to use this shoe on the track very much. I've got other shoes for that, but for faster road running, for workouts on the road, this is going to be an exceptional option that I'm going to depend on quite a bit over the coming months. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.